Listen, and I will tell you of the sisters. Now, since a long time back in human history, when the other sentient races began to watch you and study, and see you approaching sentience, they have been here, and knowing that someday, if you survived, you would join them, not just out amongst the stars, but in that greater awareness, not just of mind, but of heart. And so, they began to make you aware that they existed. In religious paintings from the Middle Ages, you can see strange UFOs. In the hieroglyphics carved into the walls in Egypt, you can see mysterious flying craft. In carved stones in Meso-America, you can find a huge number of miniature flying ships, craft, carved in the stone that remain today. They have worked to slowly make humans aware. And it is not in their nature to come and save you from destroying yourselves. If humans decide that wiping themselves out in nuclear biological warfare is the right choice, they won't interfere. They consider you a not yet sentient race, and they're right. Humans are on the cusp of sentience, the earliest awareness, that which we might call sentience, happens when the second mind comes fully online, not the first. And at that point, warfare and such become impossible. And so if you destroy themselves, they won't mourn. They'll see it like a tree that bore fruit, but it was too young to support the fruit to term. And so they'll simply wait till next year. And if next year is 100,000 or more of your years, or even longer, while the mice or the cockroaches, the sea creatures of some kind, eventually evolve to sentience, they're okay with that. Many of the races in the unity, in the oneness, they live a surprisingly long time. And when I speak of times, I use human terms, many things. I use human terms so you can understand. There are races that consider living 100,000 years to be not a big deal. Some of those who prize knowledge or meta-awareness, they have extended their life much longer, easily living more than 1 million years. They know that real knowledge, real awareness, even real passion, these things can't be made. The best you can do is prepare the soil, tend them while they grow, and they can take what you would consider a very long time to grow. And I want you to understand that though Star Trek is a fascinating story, a fascinating mythos, everyone in the universe doesn't look just like humans with different colored skins or a few little lines on their face. They don't all dress in see-through clothes and want to have sex with Captain Kirk. The variety of life in the universe is more than you can imagine. Creatures that live on the surface of suns. Creatures of a kind of plasma form. The size of perhaps your moon or larger, that travel between stars, live basically an infinite amount of time. They watch suns be born and die, and they listen to the music made by the burning of the suns. And they record these songs, not in a written format, but in their oral literature, which is what they have in their form. And they sing them. They travel millions of years at a time at vast distances across space, singing the nearly eternal songs of suns. There are creatures so tiny, you would need a magnifying glass to notice them, but who have somehow managed to achieve sentience. There is a lot of variety, but I will tell you of a few. And the first I will tell you of is the sisters. If the sisters landed on your world today and walked among you, they would evoke terror. They look like something out of nightmare, because they look like a giant grasshopper or praying mantis. Triangular heads with huge faceted eyes. They stand about 3 meters tall, but longer than they are tall. They move around on 6 legs, but they've got 2 smaller limbs in their upper torso that are somewhat flexible, though they are creatures of exoskeleton. And rather than fingers, they have something. They don't have hands like you monkeys do. They have something like cilia, like many long and delicate, dexterous fibers coming out from what you would think it was their elbows down to the tips of their hands, and it makes them able to manipulate things with a very great subtlety. The sisters in bright light are slightly iridescent, beautiful. Though, an insect that large that could eat you in one bite, it can be difficult for the primitive races to see the beauty in them, to get past their fear. In dim light, all of them, for the species that are able to see, they're surrounded by a glow of something like light that you would perceive as gold. You will probably never see them in groups. Very few, and some of only the oldest out there in what is have seen more than one of them. And you'll never see their larval forms, their younger forms. It is not until they reach adult forms that they go out. And I will tell you that they have one more stage of evolution, past the adult forms, past what human insects can do. And that very few have ever reached that form. It involves a metamorphosis of awareness that is far more than a metamorphosis of the body. And And what they look like is a mystery, because none but the oldest sisters ever attend them. And because at the moment there are none of them, the oldest ones. They travel alone, with surprisingly large craft for a single creature, but no one even knows what their craft look like inside. They're a very private people. Those who decide to travel to their homeworlds to study them, they get partway there and then suddenly change their minds. A bit like driving halfway to your summer vacation spot and suddenly wondering if you left the kettle on and turning around and going home. And there have been a couple cases where some of the younger, more impetuous races sent a kind of spy probe into their space to find out more about them. And they certainly wouldn't begrudge any living thing curiosity. But the spy probe it quit sending before it ever got close. And it was what you would consider hundreds of years later that they went to the world that had sent the probe, and the people who'd sent it were dead, had only memories of it. And they handed it back to the people there. One of the sisters went and spoke just one or two words. And exactly what she said is unknown. I say she because it is said that all of them are female. She said just one or two words and then left the probe, empty of all data but otherwise unarmed. And so no one knows, really. At least it's not in the records anywhere, what their homeworlds look like. They, if they spoke, did so with a rustling of wings. The few who've seen them spread their wings claim that they're massive, that it seems clear that creatures can still fly, though perhaps only in slightly lower gravity. They would speak with clicks and subtle noises and a rustling of wings and a shifting of carapace. But they've left spoken speech so long in their past that none of them do it anymore. Even when they are still in the vessel, what you would call an egg, before they are first hatched, they learn to speak directly to the consciousness. And creatures that speak conscious awareness to awareness, they don't use words. They use, let's call them percepts and corcepts. A percept would be a simplistic perception, fuzzy, tall, cold, beautiful. And a corcept would be a kind of flash, a passing of the core nature, the essence of a thing. I have spoken, and though you people may not yet understand it, of the energy signature of each of you. The corcept of a person would convey their energy signature, their most basic desires, dreams, fears, the core of them, in just a single flash. Right? So percepts and corcepts. They rarely show up. What's out there, or what you consider to be out there, is, oddly enough, a huge bureaucracy. If you can imagine a huge, vast bureaucracy that goes across an uncountable number of light years, and that takes thousands of your years to make decisions on even very simple things. Very slow-moving, very stodgy. and lots of political wrangling and playing. Many of them find that interesting. Understand, though, that out there is no war, there is no conflict between races. Everything that is allowed to reach space travel and to become part of the unity must have reached a second mind awareness, must be a functional creature at least of the heart, if not higher. And many races work in the third, fourth, and fifth minds, just without trouble. And in the second mind, in the realm of the heart, any war becomes inconceivable. So the sisters, when they travel, and they travel alone, they don't show up to great galactic debates. The things that fascinate others, they don't go to scientific conferences and share information. When they do show up, there's an energy about them that makes people think of them as what you might call monks. Imagine a bunch of members of British Parliament in their silly wigs and their pot-bellies all standing around arguing about some exceedingly important thing, like whether the I-9 goes through this town or that town, and just how important it is, getting all worked up about it. And then imagine someone like the Dalai Lama, but with a more powerful aura and a kind of golden glow around him, stepping into the room, and the whole room just grows silent. Right? Something like that. When they show up, they are never ignored. They radiate such a massive calm and peace, such a vast sense of the heart, that many just come instantly to their equivalent of human tears. And sometimes they will say nothing. It seems to be, I don't know, perhaps it's a game among them, perhaps it's a discipline, but they seem to make a vast effort to communicate as much as possible in the smallest amount. So sometimes they will just walk up and look at the assembly, or walk into a delicate situation and touch someone and leave and never communicate anything. And when they do, they will often communicate only to a single entity, a single person, not just humans or people, yes. They'll communicate only to a single person, and then often only with a single percept or a single concept. But it will be a thing of such profundity that individual will often have to retire for a time to integrate what they've been shown, and everybody else just stops their debates and goes home to see what astounding wisdom has been brought to them. And the sisters get back in their beautiful flying craft, shaped like, apparently, a small insect from their world, called like a dart or a darter, tiny compared to the vast craft out there, but surprisingly large craft for a single entity. And then they go. They are monks, they are creatures of heart and spirit and beauty and vast wisdom. But you'll never see more than one of them. Well, almost nothing that lives has ever seen more than one of them. Likely the great plasmids who sing the songs of stars have visited, at least some of them, and know what goes on in their worlds, but they wouldn't care. They live so long. The space whales. that the lifespan of a star is the realm in which they consider time relevant, not the life of a tiny species. Think of the human Saint Francis, known for a vast love and kindness. The birds would come and sit on his shoulders, and the animals would gather around his feet as he cared for them. And he said things like, "Grant that I may never seek. So much to be consoled is to console. To be given is to give. To be loved as to love with all my soul." He's the closest, perhaps, in human history to the nature of them. He is but a grub if you took him and allowed him to live 100,000 years amongst the greatest and wisest and kindest of teachers. He could perhaps become like what each of the sisters is. There is a race who lives in a muchly tropical world, a little race that abhors the cold. And someday, should you meet them, humans may call them Ewoks, or teddy bear people, maybe even Smurfs. They live in trees, not in mushrooms. And they're not built like Ewoks, who were played by midgets, but more like the creature Gollum, like rhesus monkeys, or perhaps spider monkeys, without the tail, with really huge eyes and a much larger head. They are these people, all of them blue-skinned, and all of them furred. Yeah, maybe a meter tall or a little less. If they were to stand upright, but they don't always. They crouch like monkeys. They spend their time in trees. And they are some of the most childish and playful creatures that you're likely to meet in the Unity. Their fur comes in many colors, and so in the brightest of sunlight, when their fur glows, they may be many different colors. Most of them only a single color, but many different colors. But in any more muted light, like amongst the trees where they live, the vast jungles, their blue skin shines through, and they look always overtoned with blue. They are immensely playful and kind of simplistic, though they have acquired the basic technologies that any sentient race does: teleportation, space travel, weather control, anti-gravity, the basic things, the simple technologies that allow for a species to feel safe from earthquakes and tidal waves and things that might threaten a primitive race like humans. And so they've developed those technologies, but they almost never use them. Many people visit their worlds and offer them advanced toys, but they like the simple. They'll cook in a wooden pot or eat out of a wooden bowl. They can teleport to another planet or have spacecraft, but they don't care about such things. They're very simple, and to them life is a game. And unlike many of the sentient races, they don't live a lot longer than humans, maybe 150 of your years. They don't want to grow old and serious. They consider childhood and playfulness to be so important that they allow themselves to grow old and wise and then pass on and come back again. Of course, they understand that they live many lives, so when someone dies among them, it becomes a game to start watching the newborn population of the world and see if they can find that one again. Everything for them is a game. I mention them because they're entertaining. When they first met one of the sisters, they were terrified. I mean, they're even smaller than you, and these massive bugs, insects, just terrifying. They were, of course, awed because of the presence that the sisters radiated. But they created the label, the concept that many of the younger races use. They call them, what is it? Something like, it's not a word you understand, it's a concept. It's a summary concept. It's that of the species, not of a single individual. But it would translate to something like terrifying, beautiful bug monks. And a lot of the younger races, they refer to the sisters as this, though never in their presence, of course. What you would consider long ago, the sisters being one of the early races to join the unity. They didn't have the guidance that a lot of you younger races will have. And they still had something. Not savage, but a lack of value of lesser races. If it's not a sentient, they didn't have much more thought about the race than humans have of, say, fish. And this came to a head when one of the sisters was considering wiping out a primitive pre-sentient race in order to establish an outpost somewhere. And when the elders, I told you there that there was a group of those who've reached the next level of metamorphosis beyond the adult form. When the elders heard of it, they realized it and stopped her. And spent a very long time in consideration. Longer than you might believe possible. And they realized that their integration of the second mind wasn't quite complete. So all of them joined together in a massive working to reach out and change their species, to make the second mind, the heart mind, a complete integration, so such, not cruelty, but just lack of concern, couldn't happen again. Doing so, if you've ever done a large-scale meta-sensing or shaping of some kind, you know that it leaves you tired. It takes physical energy. Well, if you do a big enough one, it will take more energy than you have, and you will not be able to continue to exist in form. You will die. It took all of them working together to rebuild this energy in their race, to change them. And all of them working together, they sacrificed themselves. Every one of them died. And to this day, there are none who have yet reached the stage of elder, of wise one among them. And it is part of the reason the sisters still travel and watch the younger races and study. Their analysis of the deep math, what you would call prophecy,
and tells them that someday they will meet someone who will awaken this transition. And one of them will again reach that stage, and she can guide the others as they're ready to reach that stage as well. But at this point in history, they still look. You should also know that they tend, like the Smurfs, the monkey people, they tend to reincarnate to take their next life as their own kind. They're a very, very advanced race in terms of their, perhaps what you would call spirituality, in terms of their understanding of unity in the higher minds. And they hesitate to join the younger races, lest they get lost or damaged. But it is said that when a species is at that sacred moment, where they're ready to awaken the second mind, to join the realm of the hearts, and thus begin to be mature enough to be welcomed as a junior member, as an apprentice in the unity, that sometimes one of the older or wiser of them will sacrifice their life and go to this awakening world and take a body of that species, that they may grow up among them and be part of them from within. Because far more can be done from within. And and true understanding of a species can never be gained from studying them or living among them like Jane Goodall. One must actually become them and be raised among them. They usually would choose a very difficult life, a very painful childhood. Because without that, it's quite possible that you will grow up and live an ordinary life and never realize you have something much higher to do. So they often pick lives of great pain and struggle in order that the challenge might reawaken their memory of being a sister. And having reawakened it, then they can reach out with the higher mind, the third mind, or the fourth, to the other sisters and begin to regain some of the great wisdom they had before and be able to use that from within. And there are some, at least one, maybe more. It's dangerous to just send one in case they don't awaken, but there are a small number here in this world in human form now. And those have a powerful, unbelievably huge, and deeply sacred responsibility, a debt to their people and themselves, to remember the sisters, to reach out in their dreams and their meditations, to awaken the heart as fully as possible and begin to awaken the third mind, that they can reach out to the sisters and regain their memories of the vast wisdom and gentleness that they knew, and thus shape that world, in this case, this world, from within. So if you are one of those, or you think you might be one of those, I encourage you to dedicate your life, not to science or math or some trivial pursuit like that, but to the deepest and most powerful spirituality you can find, to sacrifice every trivial thing and spend every waking moment you can spare, growing your heart to a place of vast awareness, attempting when you're able to reach into the third mind and to grow it strong and beautiful that it may reach out. And if you are not one of them, but you've spent your life doing this, you will still reach a place of great wisdom, and they may speak with you and guide you. If you are one of them, however, this is not the waste of a lifetime. The brief, mayfly existence of humans is so trivial compared to how long they live, that if you can reach this place where you reach out to them, touch them and they touch you and begin to awaken the memories of who you are, you can work 1,000 years, 10,000, in this world, guiding it through its awakening into full unity. And then get on one of their daughters and go back to spend however long you wish to remain in that form, in their sacred but mysterious homeworlds. I cannot overstate the power and beauty and importance of this race, of all the races out there. The terrifying, beautiful bug monks are in many ways the most sacred and spiritual that most will ever encounter. Most, reaching that level, they retreat into their own realms, exist only in the higher realms. For some reason, the sisters, they still go out and travel and help the lower races. Maybe it's an A3 toning of their race, I don't know. The way they respond, they are, in essence, much more A2. Maybe it is because they seek again to regain access to the elders among themselves. So they are one of the few who continue to travel and work with the younger races. And no one, I feel, no one you will meet can overstate the importance of what they do. If you have even a hint that you are one of these, give up your drama, give up your bullshit, spend whatever it costs, if that's every waking moment from now till 60 years from now, to awaken this peace within and regain that unity. And know without doubt, be certain that they are here. There are, there are at least 3 watching over this world. One in the huge outpost on the moon that is many, many races that have been watching your world for so long, but 2 others that most do not know of that are watching, because at least one of the sisters is here. And they seek to bring her to awareness. She will almost certainly have a female human form. They definitely prefer the female energies. She will almost certainly be an A2, because their entire path is that of the dancer, not of any of the others. And they are there watching and sending constant reminders and dreams and life lessons, trying to get that one or those few among the humans who are their kind to remember, because it is so important. And for those who are here that don't remember, that die before they remember, they want to catch their spirits as they leave the body and nurture them and remind them of who they are, so they can be returned to the vessel, to the egg, and again grow powerful and beautiful and wise amongst the sisters.